Good evening. This is Before It Was Headlines, It Was Prophecy. I'm your host, K.D. Elizabeth. The promises of Yud-Heh-Vah-Heh God are bigger than the problems that we're going to be seeing around us. And I do have some really great news in that Yeshua didn't tell us that we have to fight what's coming to pass. We're just called to stand and let our light shine. As a matter of fact, Yeshua Messiah is the one who's opening these seals. So we know the God of Israel is in control. It may not look like it around us, but we know he is in control. Now, I'd like to talk to you about the four horsemen. Everyone, whether we believe Scripture or not, is familiar with the four horsemen of the apocalypse. And I'm of the school of thought who believes they have been released and are riding over this earth. And so tonight, in our introductory episode, I'm going to share what that is based upon, and also that many believe that that the fifth seal has also been opened. And as things, as I said, escalate, it continues to indicate that. And I'd encourage you to Google. There are a lot of schools of thought on this, but there are several who do believe we are living in the time of the fifth seal having been opened. So I'd like to talk for a few minutes about those four guys that are in the picture at the beginning of the show. The four horsemen of the apocalypse, I believe, were released throughout, earlier in history, but there is every indication that all four have really officially been announced by now. And I'm not saying that's when they were released. I'm saying we can now rest assured that what was prophesied that their writing would bring to pass is coming to pass. Again, I'm not saying when those seals were opened. I'm just saying every indication says all four have been. I'd also like to point out that when John was recording this amazing revelation, that there were things he did not recognize, and he used items that he was familiar with to try to describe them, such as the flying locust kind of thing. And there are many who believe those may be drones, and that may be. He may have seen technology that obviously did not exist at that time, which is bringing me full circle to the rider on the white horse of the Revelation 6. Now we know the rider on the white horse in the Revelation 19 is Messiah Yeshua Emmanuel. But the first rider to be released on the white horse wore a crown and had a bow. And that to me, since it was something very recognizable, I'm really thinking he was released early in our history when primitive weaponry would be enough to conquer, because that was his purpose. And even though riding on the white horse might indicate good, we now see, what we kind of call like peace treaties and allies. Actually, we all kind of have to behave, because one false move on any country's part could bring an avalanche of repercussions. So truly, we can see that this rider has been released. And even though there is a certain amount of what appears to be power and superpower, we're basically all conquered within one false move could destroy a great deal of this planet. Now, the first notable announcement of this rider, of the four horsemen, the rider on the white horse, was announced by President George H.W. Bush in 1991 when he said, we have a new world order. He may be no more in that end time unfolding than to have announced that to our generation. And certainly the rider was released before the announcement was made at some point in history. And many believe, the 7 hills mentioned in the Revelation are in Rome. I believe they pertain to the continents, including the Middle East. And there are many who also believe along that school of thought. So the fact that the entire world really is very much in an order of what happens here in one place has an effect all around the world. The next, which leads us to the next rider, the rider on the red horse, who has also been released, and that was announced late September 2001 by yet another President Bush, George W. Bush. And this was shortly after 9/11, and around the time the USA Patriot Act became in effect, but he declared war, a global war on terror, both foreign and domestic. And he was the commander-in-chief of the most budgeted military force on the earth. As far as we know, we think, that we are so advanced in our technology as well. So, but at that time, it was certainly the largest budget, and still is, throughout the whole world. So when he proclaimed a global war, that was the announcement that peace has been removed. And that is what was said by in pertaining to the rider on the red horse, that peace would be removed from the earth. Now, we've had wars and rumors of wars, but the announcement came the end of September 2001. Now, the rider on the black horse was a bit more elusive because, to be honest, even when Messiah walked this earth, religion and wealth and riches were pretty intertwined, and of course they still are, and that's not to be done. Yeshua said, you render unto Caesar that which is his, and you render unto God that which is his. And we've intertwined the two in our country, and that is a tradition from Europe. That is a tradition from 2,000 years ago when Rome ruled all of the known world. But what has indicated this rider on the black horse is not our materialistic societies and our love of money, although that is the root of all evil, Paul told Timothy in his letter. But it's the fact that even when people are working, they cannot afford to put food on the table. The food budgets have become unmanageable to the point that 1/6 of our population is on food stamps or some sort of subsidized commodities or something that heads of households are dependent upon besides the labor of their own hands to feed their household. That is, in 2006, towards the end of August, when all of the products containing wheat doubled in price in the grocery store, and yet the oil companies continue to make amazing profits because, it said the oil would not be touched. So that is continuing to, people continue to meet that demand. But literally, nutrition and diets are changing because of the price of groceries. And that is the sign that the rider on the black horse has been released. To the point, if food is affordable, people are actually having, for the most part, there is considered the working poor, who literally have to neglect a certain amount of nutrition just to be able to spread the meals far enough. It's not the high maintenance cost of a materialistic society, although that we truly are, but the indication that the rider on the black horse is riding over the earth is the inability for people to provide the food for their own household. Yeah, I grow most of mine, and I'm certainly recommending that. We have we have a newsletter that goes out over the internet called the Goshen Gazette. I would advise you to, recommend it. Check it out. We cover everything from, like even the drones I mentioned. We have a lovely article on that this week, really insightful. But we also have growing tips and connections and links to help people sustain their family through these trying times, because it is going to escalate. And unfortunately, we're even coming to a point of time in which is one of the manifestations that we can see that the rider on the power horse is also loose and riding and has been released, is the fact that nutrition continues to decline and our food supply is being tainted. Yudheva Hay gave us instructions, dietary instructions, and it's no longer just a matter of, leave the pork and the catfish and the, don't eat eagles and buzzards. It's coming down to our vegetables are actually being genetically altered with organisms that we're not supposed to be eating. So the food supply is going to continue to deteriorate. And when that does, our bodies will continue to deteriorate. Now, the rider on the power horse, I was given confirmation of the release in June of 2007 and told to blog about it, get it on the internet, and I did. But what we've come to a point now is even our antibiotics are making people sick. And by generations of vaccinated and fed antibiotics, our immune systems are so weak. We're not a healthy society, and we have, other countries that are also discussing all these health issues, as well as famine and pestilence, that are all mentioned as being revealed as that rider on the power horse covers the earth. But what we have to look at is our own solutions are not curing anything. They're only assisting in what appears to be assisting people to live with health maladies. And many of the treatments and what we call treatments would make the ancient sorcerers just bristle, I'm sure. I mean, many of our procedures are just barbaric and just horrific to the human body. What we know is few illnesses are actually cured. Most are simply managed by pharmaceuticals, and the side effects of those pharmaceuticals are managed by more pharmaceuticals. And when it isn't possible to manage health or unhealth, when it isn't possible to manage that anymore by pharmaceuticals, the flesh is gashed and something is removed or replaced. And that has become the solution of the wisdom of man. This is basically the introduction of, before it was headlines, it was prophecy. We are indeed living in the end of days, and I can't tell you, we know no man knows the date or the hour. But I do know when Peter was standing up preaching and quoting Joel in the 2nd chapter of Acts, I do know we are 2,000 years closer than when he proclaimed it. This is K.D. Elizabeth, and you've been watching Before It Was Headlines, It Was Prophecy.